Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sunday. On the show, we have little interesting things happening today. You may wonder why I'm sitting here with some of our old boxes. Well, they're not old, they're nice boxes. Sitting here with them open on the desk. You may notice that in them, they all have different setup in the tray system. Now, you may have read the first part of my chat. We're going to break away from our refresher courses. We'll go back to them, but we're going to break away from them just for today, just for a bit of a change. And I'm going to show you how to build the little bridge lifters that we actually build, that I've sort of started developing and started using in our trays. There was a case early in the year where I had to build a tray and then sit another tray on top of it, and I couldn't figure out how I was going to get the lifter in there. So this is the development, and this is where it's come from. And now I've made little jigs and all sorts of stuff to help ease the pain when you're building it. So this is what we have. You'll notice that these are two of the earlier boxes that I built in one of our shows, and these are the trays that went in it. And this is the reason we've had this little bridge lifter built in here, is because you have, once you close the lid, you've got no room to actually have a lifter that sits up. So you have to have something that's actually recessed down into the tray itself. Now, there's two different types here. There's this one here has a double lifter, so it's a tray. Now, the way it's set in is it's recessed with a dovetail, this little panel here, and then in the tray, in the partition itself, you've got this little cavity in here, okay, which we put your fingers, of course, right, and then you need to have the top across there. So this one here's got two partitions, so you can actually, it does sit down in there nicely. And this one here is, again, very similar, only it's a single job. But the difference between these two here, this is where I was doing a little bit of experimenting, but it didn't, and it paid off quite nicely, is that you may notice in this one here, there's more of a circle involved in here, so I haven't actually cut that. You'll see when I get to making them, I haven't cut this in half, this circle. When I built it, I just cut the top off it and just left a fairly deep curve in there. This one here is a little more shallow. It's again, experimenting with different techniques. In the top of it, we have exactly the same setup. So we've got a piece of material in the middle of the top. Now, the problem with it is you're working with extremely small material. Now, the trays are all 7mm, but the partitions in these ones here are 6mm thick. So cutting a rebate in here to fit these little bridges in, it's quite a difficult little task, and it took a fair bit of work to actually work out how to do it. So I've got it sorted now. A little easier on this one here. So they were in flat trays. This one here is a tray that actually sits up, but you'll see that the tray itself is actually tapered. Right, so it tapers from back to front. It's just something different I thought of, but we've still got the same cavity. This is a little easier because it's 7mm material in the top of here, not 6mm like the other boxes. So this was a little bit easier, but still same principles, same technique. And you'll notice that the bridge on all of them, these ones here and the ones in the boxes, are actually contrasted, or they match up with something else in the box itself. This one here, that's it's got the red banks here in the bridge, and the red banks here in the top of the box, of course. So put that aside. Don't want to drop those. And these ones here, these are ones yeah, they're just ones that I've done in the past and a lot of experimenting with, and we've managed to be able to get them pretty nice. So I'll put those aside. We may go back to those through the show, so let's see. Okay, now here's where we're up to. This is the one we're going to be working on. In the box itself, I showed you last week, we made the partitioning for the bottom. So I've got 3 cavities there, or 3 spaces. And then I made the 2 trays that actually go inside there. Now I've dressed those up so that they actually fit properly. Well, they fitted before anyway. And I have to make one for the middle, but I'm going to do something special with that when the time comes. But what we need to do is, because I'm going to sit the big tray, like on the other box, I'm going to sit a big tray on the top of it, I need to have everything flat. So therefore, we've got to have the little bridge lifter in there. Now the material I'm using for the partitioning is the same as the red Banksia. That's what it looks like in its raw state. That's what it looks like when it's finished. So this is a piece we've cut for this. So the first thing I need to do is I need to fit this piece of material. You'll notice it's quite wide. It's wide enough so that I can cut 2 partitions. Both of my boxes are exactly the same, and what I need to do is I need to be able to fit those 2 into my dovetails. Okay, so I've got a dovetail channel in there on both sides, and I need to be able to fit that into there. And this is an extremely fiddly little bit of work, but you'll notice in the other boxes, in the other ones there, the box looks complete with the small amount of work that we've done to them. Finished up, and it looks really neat. So we're going to do the same with this. I could just put a piece of material in there and glue it side to side. That wouldn't be me, I don't think. Anyway, so what we have to do is we have to fit this. Now you'll notice there's the 2 things, as I said before, there are 2 things. This is wider than we need because I'm going to make 2 of them. Now they have to be wider than both of those pieces put together. Okay, so we've got it much bigger, much wider than both of them put together. And they're wider than the box. They're wider than the box for a reason. I'll show you that when we come time to do our dovetails. So let's do that first. We've got to fit the dovetails, and then we're going to cut it to the size, and then we're going to go through the process of actually fitting the bridge. Now fitting the bridge is going to be a little task, quite a complicated task, so we'll go through that when the time comes. Okay, get that out of the way. So our first task is to cut dovetail on one end of this so that it fits. Now it's longer because what I want to do is when I cut the dovetail, if it doesn't fit, I can dock it off and I can keep working until such time as I've got it fitting perfectly. Then both boxes are the same size. Get one fitting. Once I've got one fitting, I can then dock it to size and do the other side as well. So that's our first task. So let's get on with that. What we need for that is our H10 dovetail bit. Now normally when I'm making this process, or doing this process, normally what I do is make sure that I cut this and this at the same time. But I couldn't do that because of the way last week went about. But we need to measure a height for this so that I can cut the dovetails so that they'll actually fit in there. So this is where our LARK tool comes in handy. So put the LARK tool ruler into the bottom of the trench, slide up our stop, just get it to the right depth, and that's the depth of our trench. So now I set my height of my router to that height.
Well, that It takes the drama out of it, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The LARK tool is such a great tool.
It's very versatile.
You get onto Derek, he will send you one. And we have a link to his website.
It's down below in the information.
Down below. He is watching today, so if you want to message him while we're in the chat, he is there. Okay. Now, setup. You'll need a fence. Now, my fence has a cutout in the fence that the dovetail bit will fit in. Now, this one here is the A10 size cutout. That one's a H10, smaller, so it will fit in there. And I'm going to shift the table in a minute so that Tammy can actually get her camera in to watch what's going on.
And hopefully so we don't trip over the cord.
Yes, a couple of weeks ago tripped over the cord. Okay.
Well, it's like working in a cupboard.
Okay. Now I've shifted to an uneven part of the floor. There we go. It's not too bad. No, it's not good enough. Bit of maintenance here, honey. There we go. Got it. No, I didn't. Got it. Okay. Now, a piece of sandpaper. I did this last week. I showed you how to do this. Put a piece of sandpaper up against the edge of the router bit. Turn the router bit so that it's 90 degrees across your fence, to your fence. That's across this way, the cutting tooth. Piece of sandpaper up against the edge. And bring the fence to touch the sandpaper.
That's a clever trick.
Nice little setup. Now if you set that up there, I drew a picture a couple of weeks ago on how that was supposed to look. So if you go back through our shows, you'll find a diagram of what happens here. Okay, so what I want to do there is I just want to feed across. Just check that and make sure I've got it right. Looks pretty good. May need to adjust it, we'll see. So, ears on everybody. Try the fit, and I've got too much, taken too much off. That's okay, I'll dock that bit off. I'll just readjust my fence a little bit. I just want to take less off. I'm only doing it by eye, so now over to my fence, starting my saw. And this is why I've made it a little bit longer than I necessarily need to, because we're going to dock off little bits if we need to. Is on. Okay, so we'll try that again. Readjust it. some more adjustment.
Brian Luckins wants to know where the push block is, Col. You freewheeling it today?
I am. Normally I have the push block on there, Brian. But just for your sake, I'll get one out. Off to the saw. Happy now, Brian? Normally that's the process, is push block there.
Actually doing my job for me, Brian. I'm the OH&S officer in the household, in the workshop.
Okay, so now I have a perfect fit. Don't want to get it too perfect, too tight, but it's perfect anyway. So what I need to do now is just dock that to its length. So that will be docked at that length there.
A bit hard to see.
It's a little hard to see it, but
So you go inside.
I can assure you.
You go inside the cut.
Yes.
Of course.
So what I need to do is I need to go from here to here, inside. So that's from there to there. That will give me the perfect size. So over to the saw. Now I'm going to cut on the outside of the pencil line because I want it to be a perfect fit. Fingers on. Now if I need to adjust it, which I don't, it's got it spot on first go. Now it's just a matter of cutting the dovetails on the other end. I have that there. Here's on. Okay, so that's a perfect fit now. I don't want to push it all the way down because if it gets stuck, I only want it to go in there once. So now what I need to do is I need to build the bridge. Now I've got more material in this than I actually need. I can trim off the outside edges. My bridge will be in the middle of the piece of timber. So I'm going to find a centre, and then I'm going to go through the process that we use for the bridge building.
This is where it gets interesting.
This will be, I just got to make sure I get it all in the right context and explain it correctly so that you understand it. If you have any problems not understanding what I'm going to show you today, please make some comments and I'll endeavour to get back to you, because it is quite a complicated little task. Now, this is where we start. The thing with the bridges is when you look at the bridge, you'll see down in here, this part of the bridge here needs to be rounded over. The reason it needs to be rounded over is because we're going to drill a hole in our piece of timber that looks like this, and we've got these ugly sharp edges, we've got tear out, there's all sorts of things happening that we need to deal with. The issue we have is that using a roundover bit, the thickness of our piece of timber and the smallest roundover bit we have, well, the one that I can find, is this one here, the T506B. Now, the distance from the bottom of the bearing to the top edge of the cutter is 6 millimeters. The thickness of our piece of timber is 6 millimeters. So therefore, what happens is the bearing does not run on our piece of material, and that causes a fair bit of grief, particularly if you're trying to get a nice rounded over edge on the inside of the box. It should look like this. You can see this one here is nicely rounded over. It's quite smooth and it looks quite nice, and so it's just a matter of, when I do this one here, is just cut that in half and then build the bridge that goes in there, and I've got two pieces. Of course I'd have the dovetails on both ends, but this one here is just a tester. So this is where it has to happen. Just make sure we've got that working. How do we get that, or how do we get that from that roundover bit? This is what I've done. I made a jig.
Of course you did.
Actually, I made a number of them. And I made them out of plastic because it's quite easy to do. Now this is 6 millimeter plastic perspex, and you'll notice in these ones here, they all have, you can't see them on the bench probably. Oh yes you can. They've all got different size hole. Now all of those holes, if you're going to make these jigs, have to match up to the holes you're going to make, first of all, but secondly, they need to match up to your Forstner bits. So I've got half a dozen here, which are the Forstner bits that I'm using here, and that way, because I've got all of these ones here, that way I can make my rebate for the bridge any size I like, just by choosing a larger or a smaller Forstner bit. So match your jig up if you're going to make these. It's just a matter of piece of perspex, 6mm perspex with a hole in the middle, and that's all it is basically. And I use the Forstner bit to drill the holes, and that's going to match up to this one here. So now I've got a small, or actually quite a deep piece of material here that I've got to put a bridge on. So I can actually use something like 30mm, 32mm. So that's quite a large hole. I can make it bigger if I want. 35 would give me a wider space across the partition. Yeah. So I might make it 35. So we choose our 35mm Forstner bit.
It's got to be in proportion to the depth of the divider, hasn't it?
Yes.
So that it looks balanced.
Yes. And over to the drill press. And drill a 35mm hole in the middle of my piece of. Just take it slow, take it easy. So there's my 35mm, and then you can see, even though I've had a nice clean piece of material on the bench there, I've got a little bit of tear out. Now the distance from there to there should be identical, so from side to side, so make sure you're perfectly in the middle. If it's not, it doesn't really matter, and you'll notice that on the bigger box here it's more towards the front because people grab hold of it at the front. You can lift the back of the tray up as you go. Okay, so how do we round that over now? Alright, let's get some stuff here moved out of the way. You can, if you want, set yourself up with, do a tester. Stuff sorted. Stuff everywhere. Everything will become clear as I go through it. So, like I say, if you're having problems understanding how this works, by all means, give me a call. We'll get into contact somehow, and I'll help you through anything you're trying to do. So that's my rounding over bit. Now when I set the height of this, I set the height of the edge of the, I'm going to use my ruler to do it. What am I after, 35? That's 35. A bit more even. I'm setting the height of the router bit so that the edge of the cutter, the top, the radius and the cutter, what I don't want is a little step on the inside of the edge of the radius. Come up a tiny bit more.
So that's got to be just below the level of the table. Just
on the level of the table. Okay. So I've got my 35mm jig. It's the same size as the hole. So how do I line that up to make sure that we're perfectly in line there so that the bearing will run on the inside edge of that hole? Well, I've made another little gadget, a little plug. On the back of it I've scribed 35mm, so it's the one for that. And the inside diameter, the outside diameter of that part is the same as the inside diameter of that. So it fits on like that, right? So if I put that in there and have that lined up, I've got it perfectly lined up on the jig. Right, now I have to attach that to the jig. So a little bit of, I had it here before, double-sided tape. Now you only want small bits of this, you don't need a whole lot. If you put a heap on, you're going to find it very difficult to pull it off because we've got to flip it over to do two sides. Okay, so I like to put it on the outside edge a little bit, that way it's easier to get hold of when I'm trying to get it off. The thing about the double-sided tape is this stuff that I'm using, the thickness is the same all the way around. You don't want two bits on this side and none on the other side. You've got to have the same height showing. Now this is the hard bit, getting this bit of plastic off here. Okay, now just a matter of making sure you're in the on your plug
And square.
and square. Well, and that's all we need to do. And now that's perfectly lined up. Okay. Ears on, everybody. And now you can see the bearing is actually going to run on the plastic and not on the piece of timber. Okay, ears on. And you can see that I've rounded over just this edge. Now if I just peel this off, put my tape on the other side. Get my plug again. Fits on there like that. Ears on. And now I have rounded over the inside on both sides, and it's come up quite neat. Now it's just a matter of a little bit of sandpaper, a little bit of 240 or something like that, just give it a little touch up. And that's the cavity done. So now what I need to do is I need to cut that down the middle. Now I could cut it down the middle. Cutting it down the middle, if I cut it down the centre, I'll get a perfect half on here. And because I've got two boxes exactly the same, that's what I'm going to do anyway. But if you are only doing one box, what you can do is you can cut it a little higher and make it a deeper cavity in there, and it'll be curved over at the top, which is a really nice little feature, and you'll notice I've done that in one of the other boxes. Or if you just want a small cavity, you can cut it at the bottom here and just have a tiny little bit showing. So you've got options once you've got your hole done. Okay, so that little jig is just a matter of a little bit of double-sided tape. little plastic jig and a plug.
So simple.
That's basically all it is. And you can see I've got a little plug, and this is the diameter of all the other holes that are in all the other jigs that I have. So I can make it any size I like. So that one will fit on there. And this one here is the 28mm. 28mm. That one as well. So whatever size you want to make the hole, pretty easy, pretty simple, easy to work out, and easy to make as well. And you can buy this 6mm plastic from any of the hardware stores that actually sell it. The Big Green Store does it. Pretty simple process to get that done. It's almost impossible to round over that hole without some sort of aid like that. Okay, now let's cut this in half. Just want to check that I have got it in the middle of here. 35mm. Should be pretty good. Now, if I went to the drop saw and I cut that down the middle on the drop saw, I'm losing quite a lot of my hole because of the thickness of the saw blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it by hand.
Nice.
I'll cut it by hand, and then I'm going to dress it up on the drop saw. One thing that I should do is mark the other end of the hole. Clamp. So nothing moves. The reason I'm doing this by hand is because it's a finer blade. I'm not going to lose too much material out of it. So now you can see the feature of that is rounded around the corner there. That's when we rounded it over. It looks really neat, and that's what's going to be seen on the top of the box. So what I want to do now is just want to square that up. So I'll set that here. I'll put them, because they're both got to be the same size. Just want to square that up quite and make sure it's right. Something out of kilter, it won't matter. And what I'm just basically doing is making sure the top edge is square to the sides. Perfect. Okay. Now I need to put the bridge in the centre of here. Alright, so the bridge is going to go into the centre of that. So how am I going to get that into there? Well, the bridge itself is going to be a 1/4 inch piece of material. Now that necessitates using what I'm going to use is a TSRW4. So what I want to do is I want to get the rebate in the middle of the piece of timber. Now it doesn't matter if it's not in the middle if you've got 2 of them, because you can turn them around and do things like that, but I like to have it in the middle, and I generally do it by eye. So let's set up for that process. TSRW4. This is a new one, so I'm going to keep that in the packet. This is the one I've been using. Same round a bit, 1/4 inch. Oh, sorry, 1/8 inch. And what we need to do I've lost my bits. What I've got here, what happens is that fits into there. So I need to cut and work out my depth for a start. So that's got to happen. And the material that I'm using is, this one here is rose mahogany, is 1/8 mil thick. I've got some silver ash, which is the same, and I've got a little piece of jacaranda. I think I might use a piece of jacaranda for this one. And there's another one that I used for a smaller version, a smaller one. But there are bits and pieces all over the place around here with little things like that happening. So we have to cut that trench in there.
Cole, did you make the plugs on the lathe?
Yes, I did. I turned those little plugs, all I did with these little plugs was I got myself a square of camphor laurel, and I turned that into a long spigot, and I just turned it down so that it fitted perfectly onto the piece of timber. You need to have a little bit of material here so that that will sit over the top of it. Okay, so you need to have a little bit of material on that. So 6-8 mil, you know, that's only 6 millimetre thick anyway. So,
and another question Anthony wants to know is, were you using a Veritas tool? It was from Japanese Tools, wasn't it?
The saw?
Yeah.
No, that's a Veritas.
It is a Veritas,
Veritas.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought you had some from Japanese Tools.
Yes, I do, but I wasn't using one.
Okay.
Okay, so depth. Right. Set my LARK tool. So I can have quite a thin bridge across there. Get a piece of material. I could have quite a thin bridge across there, or I could have a deep one. Depends on what you feel and how much cavity you want it showing underneath it. So with this one here, so that looks pretty good. Let's measure that, see what we've got. I've got about 8 mil, 6 mil. Six mil. 6 millimeters fine. So that's the height of my setup. And so we're going to cut a 6mm trench through here. Okay, so what I have to do now is set up for my fence again. I think that might be the best side to use at this stage. Now find yourself a piece of scratch 6mm material. I'm not going to use that bit. I'm going to find myself a bit. I've got a piece of European beech here, 6mm. Actually, what's that?
It's a bit thick.
6mm.
Yeah.
So this is just a scrap piece, and all I'm going to do is adjust it so that I'm in the centre of it, or thereabouts. Lock my fence down. Okay, so now it's just a matter of feed over the top. It's not going to work, it's too much. So ears on everybody. Just checking to see if they are exactly the same size, because when you look you can see this is pretty much in the middle. So that's my little tester. So that's tested that this is the exactly right setup. All I need to do now is work out how far I want this to go. So this is where I have a couple of little stops. If we go 15mm either side of the hole, I think that should give me plenty to play with. It's 10, 15 there. And 15 on that side. Okay. Here's my other piece. Just got to make sure I line them up exactly the same. Okay, so this is, I need to be able to see that, and I need to be able to see that. So all I do now is I line that up with the outside edge of my router bit. check that. That's good. Same on the other side. And make sure you work on the outside edges.
So just put that on there, and let's have a look at the marks, see if we can see the marks.
So your mark, this mark is on that side of the router bit, and when you put it up here, this mark is on this side of the router.
So inside to inside.
Inside mark, yes.
Inside mark.
Now I could easily just sit that there and go this way, but that doesn't actually work very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how I go about it. When I hold it above my work like that with my thumbs, and I'm sliding down the stop. And I'll slide down there to start with, and then I'll run all the way through to the other side, and I can come back again, but the important thing to remember is you must go this way. If I try to do this one and then that one, this one here will kick away from the fence, and that will cause you to not have a very nice trench. Now if it fails, so be it. So let's give it a shot, and we'll see how we go. So here's on. Quite happy with that. So it's in the middle. Now just to do the other one. So same process. Now it's a matter of making the bridge that goes in that cavity. And we need our 1/8 material, so I'm going to use a piece of jacaranda. So all I'm going to do is cut myself a piece of that. The 1/8 material will fit in there perfectly. Now I've got rounded over ends, so we've got to deal with that as well. So we need a piece that long from there to there. So I'm just going to cut a piece off over to my drop saw. Now, I'm not too concerned about its width at the moment. All I need is a piece of material that I can use. I'll cut it to length and then deal with it. Okay, so when I cut this to length, now remember we have rounded over corners here, so you need to be a tiny little bit longer than necessary when you cut that to length. So cut that off. little piece, and you can see it's just a tiny little bit longer than I need to be, about 1/4 of a millimetre. The reason for that is because I'm going to round over the corners. Just make sure that's nice and round so that when I fit in there, it matches up to the same shape as the 1/4 inch router bit. A bit more. Should take a little bit more off this end.
Dave Rowlands was saying he's broken several of the very fine spiral bits by going a bit deep.
TSRW 5 is the ones that Dave's broken.
Yeah.
I've spoken to him about them.
Yeah, no, he was just making the comment that a few millimetres at a time is best, like go gently. Because it's very fine cutter.
Okay. So there's one. And I'll just need now to glue maybe knock off time pan. At least I'll get one bridge made for you. May not get it fitted into the drill, but into the so.
Is that a bit deep?
Yep.
You're going to cut off. Oh, that's right. You're going to cut it from the top, aren't you?
Yep. A little bit of glue in here. Don't need much. Okay, so that's quite a nice snug fit. Next thing to do is to trim the top off. And then a little bit of sand. And there's my little bridge. Now, what we need to do is need to fit that into the box. Now, here's the box, and you can see it's way bigger than it needs to be. So if I just turn it upside down and mark that, and dot that off. Don't throw that little bit away. there we have our little bridge in our box. Right. It's still a little high, but I'm going to take a little bit more off the bottom of it. But with this bit that's left over, turn it over and we'll dress that to fit into there. So that when you turn the box over, you can see the partition in the box there, and when you turn it over, it looks like it comes all the way through the box. In actual fact, it doesn't. It's just an extra piece added on, and that's a little bit extra left over. So something very, very clever. It looks really interesting to people. They go, oh, gee, you've got two bottoms in it. No, you haven't. You only got one. And that helps with the expansion and contraction of the box. So that's the little setup that we have. And we just need to dress that up to fit that in. And that will fit in the box. Like that. Okay. So that's what it's going to look like in the end. The other one will be exactly the same. And you've got this lovely little bridge just as a feature, and the other box will sit flat on top of that. So that's it for the week. That's it for the day. I hope you got something out of that. It's I always enjoy doing the smaller stuff like that because it means that I'm sort of having to focus. I have to come up with different ideas and different things to do different features on boxes, because after a while you tend to sort of do all of the same thing, and then it gets a bit boring, a bit tedious. So come up with something new and have a different look about your boxes. It also helps with your skill level as well. So lift your skill level just by doing all those little things that you have to do to get the box right. So that's it for this week. Next week we'll be back to the refreshers again, I think. I have to work out a program. Anyway.
You've got another tray to make.
Oh, I've got another. Oh, yes, I have. I've got the top tray. Actually, that's actually part of the refresher, is the top tray, and the top tray is the tapered one. So it's got a narrow taper on it. So I have to use one of the refresher techniques that I used earlier in the program to build that tray. It's quite a big tray, so that could be quite interesting for you. Again, it's another one where we're going to have two little bridge lifters in as well. So that'll look really, really nice when we've got that done. It'll be done in, I think we're going to do that in European Beach and Cedar, so that should be interesting for you. Now, don't forget, if you aren't subscribed already, please subscribe to the channel, and we'll give you a reminder every Sunday. And I think we didn't do too bad this week considering daylight saving. Everybody is turned up right now and it's all over. Okay, so have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all next Sunday.